Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another live Wednesday night edition here on the Rock Pile. It's good to be back with everybody after a couple of weeks off. It's hard to believe that the last show we did was the college football show with the boys, going over the bowl games and national championship game and more. So I appreciate everybody tuning into that. Tonight's special guest, we had a little bit of a technical difficulty trying to get on, but we finally were able to get Jason Baker on. So I'm going to bring him on in just a moment. If you're following tonight, make sure you can follow on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. If you have any questions or comments for Jason or myself, you can put them in the comment box. I'll try to pull over as many as I can here this evening. So without further ado, let's bring Jason on now. Can you hear me this time?
I got you.
All right. How we doing, man?
Good. How are you? Thanks for
It's
having me.
doing no problem. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. I don't think it's been maybe 20 or 25 years since I've actually seen your face. I hear about you all the time, but yeah, it's been a while since we've seen each other.
Well, it's good to see you, man. It's good to have you on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So Jason, tell everybody. So you're now down in Charlotte. You're a scout for the Angels, but I want to start first. Growing up in Rome, talk to us a little bit about what it was like growing up in a small town.
Yeah, well, it was great. I'll tell you one of the great things about Rome, and I've seen this in all the travels I've had all over the country, is the close knit community that I know I came from. We're bakers, and so we're not Italian, but we somehow managed to get a foothold into the Rome community and just being a part of the sports scene there and being a part of the town in general. It was a wonderful experience growing up there. A little more snow than I would have liked, maybe looking back on it, but being a baseball player, but nonetheless, one of the better towns that you can grow up in, and one of the tighter knit communities that I've come across. And so I'll always have a really special space in my heart for what Rome was in my life.
And Jason, now you got to take me back because I know you were a basketball, baseball guy, but were you a three-sport guy?
No, I was up until my sophomore year, and then my dad and I talked, and he said, "Listen, you're not going to play soccer in college, probably." He said, "You're going to have to get a scholarship in baseball if you're going to get outside of going, to community college." He goes, "You're going to have to, we're just going to have scholarship money." So he made me make a choice, and he said, "Listen, you can stay with the three sports, but I'm telling you, you got spring and summer for baseball, you got basketball that you love in the winter." He goes, "You need to have at least one season that you're dedicated to working out and getting strong and trying to just put yourself in a physically advantage position." And so I used the fall to do that. And I missed the soccer days. The one thing my dad didn't, we had six boys in my family, and he would never let us play football. And the only reason, he was very, very honest and upfront about it, he said, "I don't want anybody dislocating the shoulder. I know you got to throw." He goes, "You guys can't throw, you're not going to play professional baseball or football, or I'm sorry, you're not going to play professional basketball or football." So he goes, "If you got a chance at anything, it's going to be baseball. So you're not going to put all that behind you by getting hurt in a football game." So that was his philosophy. And, now I look back at it and I think, yeah, maybe he was right.
So Jason, you played for some pretty well-known coaches, and I've had them on this show. I did a legend show and had a lot of them on this show. But talk to us a little bit about basketball-wise. I know you got a chance to play for Coach Evans. Talk to us a little bit about what it was like playing basketball in Rome.
Yeah, Coach Evans for me is he's never stopped being a mentor. I haven't talked to Coach personally probably in the last 4 or 5 years. Just life happens, and I've got four kids, and he's busy with doing a lot of things. But I always try to but whenever I am able to get back to Rome, I always try to catch up with him and get lunch or something. Coach E was an amazing guy in the basketball arena in Rome. I mean, he's the staple. He's our Bobby Knight, honestly. I mean, he's a character. He's passionate. He was intense. At the end of it, I think the one thing that always stuck out about Coach Evans is that you knew he really cared about you as a person, and he put so much time and effort into that program. It's amazing the effort that he put into that program. I look at this. I go around. I see different high school baseball programs in the same vein, in the same light. But Coach Evans took it he took it even a notch higher than I've seen even some national powerhouse programs do, where he would interview you. He would put all your lists of your favorites things and things you've done in your life, and he made you feel like you're an NBA player, even if you struggled to get on the court in high school. And I think he's an amazing personality that Rome has really should treasure that it had a chance to have in our community.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then when you flip gears to the baseball side, I know you played Legion ball for the Bones, and I think you played for Coach DeCoste, right?
That's right. Yep. And both guys. I mean, Coach DeCoste, God bless his soul. He really loved the RFA baseball program, and he had a great vision for it. And we were fortunate enough my senior year in '92 to have an undefeated team up until the sectional championship game. We got ranked in USA Today. We had a lot of really good players with Eric Kwasniewski and Dave Mecca and Scott Bakufkas, Jason Tagliaferri, Doug Primo, Brian Tarduno. I mean, just a lot of guys. Jerry Burleson. Um, it was so much fun to have a really talented senior class, and I think we had about 12 or 13 players go on and play in college. And Coach DeCoste just loved every minute of it, and he loved being the coach of the team. He really had a fiery way about him, but he brought the best out of us, and it was a really good example of Rome sports. And then the Abones were just tremendous. Obviously, the Smith Post and American Legion, and we got a chance to go to the state tournament my senior year, and finished third in the state and got to go to Cooperstown. But I'll tell you, the one thing about the Abones, Tony really brought a professional mentality to that program. And he made you learn that you couldn't just be successful in high school and think that you were going to be successful at the next level. You had to do it certain ways that were going to make you better. And I didn't really quite, until you actually go through it, you don't understand that. But Coach Abone made you understand it because he made you want to look at a bigger picture. And I always really appreciate that about him, that he had a much bigger and wider grasp of what was out there than just Oneida County. And so that was a beautiful thing to be a part of.
Yeah, and Jason, one of the things I never played Legion ball because in the summer times I usually was going somewhere for a football camp or something like that. So I didn't get a chance to play Legion ball, and of course I follow the history of the Bones and Legion. But it seems like nowadays that the high school kids, at least here, they take a little bit more pride. They look forward to playing Legion ball. I almost feel like back in the day when we were in school, it was always about the jersey. It was always about playing for your school. And I feel like now it's kind of changed a little bit. Do you think it's more because the Legion gives you a little bit more, I guess, more visibility with college coaches and so forth than what high school does?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. Even now, American Legion has kind of phased into being a secondary program than it was when probably you and I played, and that's because this travel ball has become the end all. I mean, it's the AAU teams; these teams get all the best players to play on the same team and take them to these national tournaments where they're exposed to a lot of scouts and a lot of colleges. And so because of that, I think both the high school ranks and the American Legion ranks have kind of been hit by this travel ball stuff, and it's really unfortunate because even in public schools now, a lot of these kids will transfer their junior and senior years into these powerhouse private schools to basically be exposed to better competition, but also to be in the bigger spotlight. And unfortunately, it's taken a lot away from just the public school rivalry, the American Legion rivalries that we used to have with Smith Post and Adrian. I'm sure it's taken a hit because of this, because the best players are going to play in these summer league teams that are either down in New York City or in Albany, or some of us even some of these guys even go down to play in the South and play in that warm weather where they're playing. They play 60 games in a summer, but I don't blame them. But at the same time, it's taken away a little bit of that really fun rivalry stuff that we used to have growing up. So it has taken a hit in that regard.
And how about the three sport athlete? It seems like the three sport athlete now. I mean, you mentioned the AAU. I mean, my son's 10 years old, and if he wanted to play basketball all year round, he can play basketball all year. Same thing with baseball now. There's a lot of indoor facilities that you can work on baseball. Are you in favor of that, or are you still kind of again, I'm old school thinking I would rather have that three sport athlete that helps in other sports, right? It might help your agilities and stuff like that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you, Rock. I mean, I think what we're seeing today, and it's really unfortunate, is that we're seeing a lot of kids that are focusing on one sport, and because of that, they're losing some of their ability to be an overall athlete. Um, Now the repetitions might help in some, being a repetition type player. But when it comes to true athleticism, I think there's nothing better than playing in different sports that demand different kind of athleticism and different kind of athletic moves that you have to establish in order to be successful. And I think I'm seeing that a lot in the scouting level. Just I'm seeing a lot of guys that come in really mature, strong-bodied, 18-year-old kids that are 200 plus pounds, strong as an ox. They've just done baseball now for the last 3 or 4 years, and they'll be able to do some strength things and some baseball repetition things because they're doing it all the time, but they lack overall athleticism. And I'll tell you, one of the things that we look for, and one of the things that I gravitate to as a scout, when I see a player, excuse me, who can be an athlete on the baseball field, my eyes light up because there's just not that many left. There's a lot of guys that play just baseball. There's a lot of guys that just go out and they lift weights and then they're right into their baseball stuff and they don't try to develop any of the other core athleticism that only basketball and football and soccer can bring. And so I'm a huge favor, back to your original point, of guys playing a lot of sports because it just brings out an overall ability to do things that you can't do if you don't know the opportunity to make those movements that you're not granted if you don't play these other sports.
Jason, I was thinking the other day when you responded and said you were going to come on with me, I was trying to go back and say to myself, when I was in high school, like when it was a Friday night or Saturday, instead of going out, your brother Steve and I would go to the deaf school with you. It was you, your dad, Steve, myself. I think Matt played with us, but we would go to the deaf school and just play basketball for hours and hours. And nowadays when I look back, I don't see many kids outside throwing a ball around anymore. My son's guilty. My son likes to play video games. And I'm like, Aiden, you got to get outside, shoot baskets. What happened to those days? Those days seem to be long gone.
Unfortunately, man, I'm with you, and I don't know how much more we can do to stop it. I'm trying in my family. I got a 10-year-old as well, who's my oldest, and we have a rule, and it's a rule that my parents put in our house. And I look back, and I guess there were times maybe I fought it, but I love sports, boy. I loved all of them, and
Hmm.
my 10-year-old loves them all too. And he looks like he's going to be a good player in a lot of sports, and he's doing all the stuff. But I told him, I said, growing up, we had a rule in our house. We weren't allowed to watch video. We weren't allowed to have video games in the house, and we were allowed to watch a half-hour TV a day. That's what my parents put on. That's what they did. That was the rules they set. And I'll tell you, if kids would just understand, if you would take that time to put down the video game and work on a specific skill of a sport that you want to be good at, you are putting yourself in a real opportunity to be that much better than everybody else in the country. If you have a real passion to be a baseball player, let's just do that because that's my arena. If you have a passion to be a baseball player, put down the video game, start doing different things that you can do to get your arm strong, get out there and get a buddy and start long tossing, do stuff, take that batting practice. It doesn't take anything to get a buddy and go down, grab a few balls and just start hitting at the field. It's work ethic, but it's also passion. And we need that in this game again. We need it in all the sports. The video games are, I'm telling you, they're such a time sucker, boy. They take all the wind out of your sails to do anything but sit there in front of a TV. And
Exactly.
I like to put it on my son like this. I go, can you imagine if you just sat back and looked at you and your thumbs are just twiddling and you're sitting here like this for hours on end? Can you imagine that? And it's just so silly if we actually step back and see what are we doing, and so I've gotten on my soapbox here, but I'm telling you, I'm with you all the way. There's got to be a way to get these kids back out playing again. I understand parents, it's a different day and age. Parents don't trust a lot of people in some regards, but man, there's still the neighborhoods that get the kids together and get them to play without a parent involved. That's the other thing. You don't see kids just do it on their own. Get out there and play without parents around trying to organize it. Let them go figure it out themselves. And
You know, Jason, I used to go, if you remember Brian 80, who was a good friend of mine. We used to go to Franklin Field we'd ride our bikes at like 8:30 in the morning. We would go play baseball at Franklin Field. Archie Sinfraco, who I've interviewed, Archie was my coach there. We would go play baseball, and then after baseball, we'd come in, get a slush puppy, go back out and play bat. It was at 8 to 5, and my mom and dad would laugh and say, "You had a job as a kid from 8 to 5, and it was at Franklin Field." I
that's right.
always had a ball in my hand, whether it was a baseball, basketball, football.
Yeah.
But The one thing I wanted to ask you is, a lot of people say, and I've been in different towns, you've been in a lot more than I have, but just because you live in a small town, some of the bigger schools, and we'll get into, your playing days, but the bigger schools won't find you. And my message to kids has always been, if you're good enough, they're going to find you.
That's right. And I think the big thing that kids should know is if you get out and you start to do stuff that's going to make you a better player, if you're willing to put the work ethic in, and if you have the God-given talent. So, I don't pretend to say that everybody's been blessed with the same talent. That's absolutely not true. There's huge differing talents out there. But I've also seen a lot of guys grind with the ability they have and get to a point where they can be really successful college players, if they have just average ability. But if you're willing to put the time in and you do the work over and over again, you can have nice college careers. What level that is, I guess, depends on the talent you've been blessed with. But if you're willing to put the work in, you will be found. There will be colleges that will find you. And some of these showcase events are great. Some of them are just money makers that really you should avoid at all costs. And I think it's just pointing out and knowing which ones are going to be beneficial and which ones aren't. But again, if you have the ability and you can go and have a good career at RFA or US, the Utica schools, I'm out of the loop. So I used to be
Hmm.
Proctor when I was
Hmm.
there. But I mean, if you can
Yep.
do those things, you're going to have an opportunity to play in front of coaches that will come see you. Now, it might be tougher to play down south because coaches don't usually come up north to bring guys south. It's usually the other way around. But there are opportunities for guys that are willing to put the work in and have been blessed with a certain amount of talent.
Now, Jason, when did you know that you were baseball was going to be the path? When did school start looking at you when you were in high school, and how did you land on going to Liberty?
Well, after my junior year, I did pretty well my junior year in high school, where I had led our team in batting average and one of the league leaders in our league, and I started getting letters from some schools, but I really didn't have a whole lot of know-how about how to go through the process. I didn't have the big schools yet. I was more kind of New York State schools and that kind of stuff. But then I started to have some people that I played against, who had been exposed to some better competition, talk to some coaches that were recruiting them on my behalf, and I started to get some letters from bigger schools, from some bigger schools, and then I had a nice junior season at Smith Post, and then rode that into a nice year in my senior year. And I remember my senior year, I still was not sure where I was going. And Liberty had sent a guy up to see me, and I had done pretty well, and they offered me a scholarship. Well, I came from a Christian, strong knit Christian family, and going to a Christian school for me was something I wanted to do, but I wanted to play Division I baseball, and Liberty was a perfect fit for me. I had some other schools that I had a chance to talk to with South Carolina and Old Dominion and Coastal Carolina and those type schools, but Liberty was the school that was a perfect fit for me. And so usually that recruiting process now starts much earlier. I'd say a lot of these kids are being looked at after their ninth, 10th grade year, just because the summer circuit stuff is so prevalent now that it wasn't in existence when I was playing. So the recruiting is a whole different animal now, than even back 20 years, 25 years ago.
And how crazy does it have to be? And we'll get into the COVID impact too. But nowadays, like when I was going to school, my dad was sending VHS tapes, to colleges. And now with YouTube and Huddle and all these different apps that coaches can view, online, and now you have the transfer portal that's eating up college sports. What's your thoughts first on the kids being recruited now, the way it's done now versus it was years ago? And talk to us a little bit about the COVID impact.
Yeah, I think the recruiting process is, it's really kind of it's blown up is what it's done. Some of these kids are getting recruited because these colleges are so competitive, especially the major colleges. I mean, you look at Florida, LSU, South Carolina. I mean, some of these major schools in the SEC and ACC. I mean, they're looking at kids and offering them or talking with them about making commitments after their ninth grade years or freshman year in high school. And it's really I think it's kind of unfortunate because these kids are trying to commit because of social media. A lot of it, they want to show all their friends how good they are, and hey, look at me, I've verbally committed to these different
Hmm.
powerhouse schools. But then they go on and they develop, and maybe their overall talent ability has kind of topped out, and they're about the same player they were in ninth grade, as they are now as a senior. And then schools are kind of taking back those opportunities to go to that particular institution. And I think that's the biggest disappointment is a lot of these colleges sometimes overcommit with the amount of money they're going to give a player and then bring it back later on. And I think that's something that's really tough because the kid they don't know, and it's really in a way it's not their fault because they don't know that the kid's going to be the same player that he was 3 years ago. But sometimes that's the way it turns out, and and both sides are kind of stuck. And then there's a parting of ways after the freshman year because you're not getting any opportunity. And so in that regard, it's a little disappointing. I think it's always better to wait. And I know that they don't have that luxury of waiting anymore. These guys, it's such a competitive market. They have to get these
Right.
at such a young age. So, but at least if you wait, you know exactly what you're getting. And if for the player side, you're going to go and play that particular place. The worst thing, and I think this is a really something. If anybody's going to listen to this, then what I'm saying, and will take one piece of advice: don't get starry-eyed about going to these major programs. If you're a draftable player and you've got a chance to go play at this major program and you can play, by all means, do it. But don't think that you have to get on these campuses and go to these major schools. If you don't play, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to see you play if you don't play. If you have got to get on the field. So the Cortlands and the Lemoynes and these different schools, if you're going to go there and you got a chance to start as a freshman, you should go to those schools. If you're going to go to a bigger school, Division I school that you're going to have to ride the pine for 2 years before you even get an opportunity, don't do it. Go to a junior college, get some opportunity to play off and learn to play the game at the higher level, and then go to a bigger school if that's still your dream. But go somewhere where you're going to play. And it's the only way you're going to get better in baseball is you have to play to get better. You can't just practice. You have to play in game situations and see good velocity and good breaking balls and learn to create good at bats and pitch against the better hitters and play defense at a certain level to be successful. And then to answer your other question on COVID, I still remember I was in Arkansas at a high school game when I got the call, and it was funny. I was about 20 other scouts in the stands watching this really high profile high school player, and everybody's phone rang at almost the exact same time. And I remember we took the phones out and we're looking at them, and everybody's getting the same message: hey, get the first flight out and get home. The pandemic had just been declared by the World Health Organization, and everybody was in the same boat. And it's definitely taken a toll on everything we do, because when it first hit that first year in 20, I guess it was 2020, we basically had to have our draft, a 5-round draft instead of a 40-round draft.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our evaluation was done off of video, because we couldn't be in the stands anymore. And so it was done from the previous year. So a lot of guys ended up getting drafted based on what they did their sophomore year in college or junior year in high school or the summer circuit in the high school, rather than what they did that current year. And that's a big difference. A lot of kids make a big change. And so since COVID's come, we've had to really adjust how we scout. And we got to, some of the stuff we have to use video more often. We have to really figure out what the school's rules on it. Some schools, especially in California, they don't let people on campus to watch games at times. So you're constantly adjusting whatever the COVID protocols are.
In a lot of the colleges too, they gave their kids another year of eligibility. So you had some seniors coming back for another year. So how did that impact the incoming classes that were coming in? I'm assuming they were a lot smaller coming in, right? Freshmen?
There were some smaller, but I'll tell you what it did is these freshmen came on and it was a whole different ballgame now because, these guys are now 5th-year seniors and they're given their senior year. Now that opportunity for them to play just disappeared. So now a lot of these kids were transferring to junior colleges, or taking opportunities at a different school with that transfer portal. So now you're looking at a whole different way of trying to decide, well, where am I going to go to school now? Because the starting shortstop that was supposed to graduate is still there. He didn't get drafted, or he's got that extra year. He's going to take it. He's going to take that extra year of education if he doesn't have a chance to play professionally, but he's going to be there. And I know that my spot's going to be taken. So, it's had to make people adjust the way they think about colleges. And again, if you're listening to this one thing, I want to just keep reiterating it. Even some of the best players in the country that are freshmen, they ended up not signing out of the draft. Could have been a third, fourth round pick out of high school. They go to college. They're not starting. Those guys are transferring to junior colleges because they know, hey, I got to play. I got to
Hmm.
play. That's the same all the way across the board. If you're the best player in the country to struggling to stay on the team, you have to play if you're going to get good at this game. And I just want to make sure that people out there understand. Go to places you can play. It doesn't matter how big it is. The only way you ever get noticed is if you're on the field. And if you're not on the field, you won't get seen.
So, Jason, let's go back to your playing career. You go to Liberty, you go on to Liberty, have a great career there. You get drafted. I think was it the Baltimore Orioles that drafted you?
No, it's the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Oh, okay, the Dodgers.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
take us through that process. Like, how exciting was that, and when did you start knowing that you had a shot?
yeah. Well, I after my sophomore year at Liberty, well, let me go back. My freshman year, we got a chance to go to Georgia Tech in the regionals, and we were playing against Georgia Tech. That had the number one team in the country at that time. They had Jason
Mm,
Varitek and Nomar Garcia Parra and Jay Payton and Brad Rigby on that team, and we opened up against them. We won the Big South tournament, so we got to go to the regionals, and we started down there in Georgia Tech. And I remember Brad Rigby was pitching, and I had never seen a breaking ball so sharp as just as this guy's. He was a first round pick. They had 4 first rounders on that team, the guys that I
wow.
mentioned. And I remember at that point there was about 10,000 people there at that game, and it was the biggest crowd I had a chance to play in front of. And I got a chance to start as a freshman, and I'd had I was hitting like 7th in the order, but I was starting to kind of come into my own a little bit as I went through and started to make adjustments at the plate. And I remember just thinking, this is what big time baseball is. And these are the kind of crowds that you have to play in front of and perform against. And this guy pitching is what, if you want to play in the big leagues, this is the kind of competition that you're going to face all along the way if you really want to play on the best stage of all in the major leagues. And so we ended up losing that game 3-2. We gave him a great game, but it was a fun game, and I had a pretty good game that day. I got a fastball, and fortunately didn't have to hit that breaking ball, but I got a couple hits that day, so it was a good day for me. But I still remember thinking this is really gonna be a big part of my next step. And so my sophomore year, I was able to set our batting average record at Liberty, and then my junior year, I set the home run and RBI record. I had a really good junior year, and I knew going into my junior year I needed to hit with more power in order to really go at a good spot in the draft. But unfortunately, I pitched as well, and I wish I hadn't because I was a center fielder at heart, and I love
Hmm.
playing every day. But I could throw well, and so I'm left-handed, and I was able to close for them. But I pulled a muscle or a ligament in my elbow, and so that really affected my draft status. But the Dodgers still took a chance on me, and I knew I was heading in that direction. I was getting a lot of calls from scouts, and things were going well. But halfway through the year, I couldn't throw, so I knew there was going to be some issues with that, and that ended up hurting me in the draft. But still got a chance to sign with the Dodgers, and that's kind of how the process went, and it kind of goes from there.
I always tell people I think baseball, out of all the professional sports, I think I know they're all hard to get to the professional level, but I think baseball to me seems like it's the hardest path just because you have so many different levels to play before you even get the call up, to the big leagues.
Yeah, it's tough, and it's almost like salmon swimming upstream. I mean, there's so many things that can get you. For high school signs, those guys that sign out of high school, it's really being away from home. How do you adjust to being away from home for the first time? And college guys, I mean, it's just, can you get through without getting injured? I mean, there's so many games you're playing. You're playing a 140 game season in the minor leagues, and you're just having, there's so many things that can go wrong. Relationships, people get sidetracked with relationships, people get sidetracked with, I'm not making enough money in the minor leagues, or I just don't like being away from home that much. I miss my parents. I miss just being the hometown hero. You're in these towns. Like my first year I played in Great Falls, Montana. I mean, it's
Oof.
you're in different places that you've ever been. So there's a lot of things you have to compete with. It's not just on the field. And then it's the aspect of you're facing guys from all over the world. I mean, you're facing a lot of Dominican players for the first time, and and players from the Far East, and so you're looking at the best players from all over the world. This isn't just a United States deal. It's become more of an international game every year, and the Dodgers kind of led the way in that. So I saw that firsthand, and it to your point, it really is about each step of the way you have to show that you can handle the competition, but you have to handle the off-field stuff as well.
And Jason, I think it's really neat. I mean, you come from a family of brothers, and I always think in Rome, everybody, you got the Ryan boys and you got the Baker boys, who I know you guys all very well. But you were drafted, but Steve was drafted, Garrett was drafted. So how cool is it to have three brothers drafted? And Matt, I think, played at what? Was it Wheaton College Matt played at?
Yeah, actually,
Good.
all of us played. Todd, Matt, and Josh all played shortstop at Wheaton College, and then me, Steve, and Garrett all played at Liberty, and Steve and I were center fielders, and Garrett was left-handed pitcher.
I forgot Todd played. Did he play in college too, or
Yeah,
was it?
he played at Wheaton as well. We all kind of went every other brother went to the same college, and then we just did it that way. But it was cool. It was great. It's great to come from a family that had so many similar interests. All my brothers had the same love for baseball, and so it was it's a lot of fun. We've always been able to sit around and talk about it and talk about our experiences and tell each other who the best players was, and I always make sure to know they know it was me. So,
I was just going to ask you, who was the best one? Who was the most competitive one amongst all you guys? And
well, I'm gonna be biased because I always believe in myself, but I'm
yeah,
gonna take the high road here. Steve was definitely physically the most talented. He was just big and strong, and
hmm
he could run, he could throw, he could hit for power, he hit the ball a long way. And so he was a tremendous player, and he made the most of the opportunities he had. I think I think Steve's demise in Double A was just that he tried to be too much of a power hitter, and instead of
hmm
staying inside the ball and using the other side of the field, which he had really done in he was a California star at A-ball level, and getting to Double A, he decided he really wanted to have a chance to be an everyday player, and that's great, but Steve's role probably would have been best served as a fourth outfielder because he could play all three outfield spots. He could really run and throw, and he was more of a contact guy over power. Although he had power, that wasn't his game to hit 25 or
hmm
30. It was more like 10 to 15 and steal some bases and really give you great defense and a good arm. So it's just kind of knowing your role and what kind of player you are. But Steve had a great run with it.
So you had Steve was a righty, Matt was a righty, Josh was right. He was right-handed too, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you were the lefty and Garrett was lefty.
Yeah, so me and Garrett were the two lefties, and of course they put the lefties on the mound all the time, and that's always the dilemma. Is like, well, do you really want to stay here? But for me, I ended up pitching at some point in my minor league career because I could throw hard and I'm left-handed, but it wasn't where my heart was. My heart was always on playing in center field, and if you don't grow up doing this stuff, it does take a toll. It's just something that your body has to get used to, and so there's a real art to learning how to pitch.
So Jason, take us through. You get drafted, and then when baseball, I guess, for playing baseball career comes to an end, where did you get into the scouting? Where'd that come into play?
Yeah, so it was a long road for me in the minor leagues. I ended up playing until I was almost 30 years old, and I remember when I first signed with the Dodgers, Terry Reynolds was the scouting director, and Terry and he came to Great Falls, and we had a nice conversation in the stands one day after a game, and every time he came to look at us wherever we were, whatever level I was at, he'd come in. He always make sure to say hello, and it was just a nice relationship, and anyway, years later, after I'd gone through a bunch of different injuries and finally decided that, man, maybe it's time to do something else and really make some money, as we all have to at some
hmm
point. But I was basically deciding what I was going to do next. I had an opportunity to go to spring training with the Rays, and I decided, I was thinking about pursuing it. But again, I knew I was getting older and I was really battling a lot of different injuries. And Terry called me and he said, "Hey, I don't know if you're ready to do this yet, but I know you're getting close to 30." He said, "I know you've had the injuries that you've had." He goes, "I think you might be really good at the scouting gig." And he goes, "We just had our guy in New England and New York State, New York City, who covered that area, had a family emergency, and he's not going to be able to scout. anymore. He's going to have to tend to, an illness in the family. And he said, "Would you be interested in taking that job?" And it was like that crossroads. I knew in my mind it was time to give it up, but it was hard. But I decided, you know what, if I'm going to stay in baseball and not wake up wondering how I'm feeling every day, and if I'm going to be able to throw like I should or run like I should, now I can actually wake up and think, oh, I just get to go watch the game and see if these guys are any good. And so I decided it was time to do it. And so he was with the Cincinnati Reds at the time. He had just become the scouting director with the Reds. And so my first job, it was to do that New York State, New York City, New England area and see the better players in that area. And that's how it all started for me.
So now take us through. So what's involved? You got to be during baseball. So, I mean, you got to be on the road quite a bit. You've probably watched a ton of baseball. But what goes into being a scout? Like, what's a typical day look like for you?
Yeah. So I would say a lot of it is, well, let's just start where this really starts. In the summer after the previous draft, they will start to have these summer showcases, and they do a really good job of getting the best players who are rising seniors to play in these big showcase events, and then Team USA. And so you're seeing basically they'll have something called the East Coast Showcase on this side of the country, where you'll have teams that are represented from the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast, the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida, and then the Deep South and the Midwest. And they'll play a round-robin tournament, and they get all the best high school kids that are rising seniors. So you get to see the very best players play against each other, which is number one, because you get to see them play against good competition that when they get to their regular season in their regular high schools, you don't always see good competition, but you're seeing them play against the best of the best. And then you get to assemble your list going into the next year of these are going to be the best high school kids. Now on the college front, you get 3 years. So you've seen those guys as their freshman and sophomore year. So by the time they enter their junior year, you have a pretty good idea of what they are at these major colleges and guys who have kind of made a big splash at some of the smaller schools. So that's kind of how you start your year. The start of my season will actually kick off here this weekend. There's a high school showcase in South Carolina, and you can see how those players have physically developed that are the better players. They're going to come to this showcase and they'll take BP and throw bullpens and run the 60. And, but a big part of it is these kids change so much in 6 months. Their body gets so much stronger. And especially with the weightlifting and the training that goes on nowadays, these guys can be totally different animals when they come in from after 6 months of really working out and getting themselves in the best shape they can for the draft and for their high school season. So that's where it really starts. And as my schedule kind of moves forward, like I'm going to start with the junior colleges in Florida. I'll see the best junior colleges in a round robin tournaments down there. And then as things get into the Division I season, I'm going to start out at Ole Miss this year in Oxford, Mississippi, and see them play against Charleston Southern for a 3-game series. And Ole Miss has probably 4 or 5 guys that'll go in the first 2 or 3 rounds this year. So it's just kind of, that's how you're constantly on the road during the spring. You have to have a very understanding wife and a very understanding family. Now, my family doesn't know anything but this life. So in a way, that's a really good thing. They think this is normal, and they love to make trips with me whenever we can. And we go to Cape Cod every summer. That's where the best college guys play in the summer. So we're able to go up there and see those guys and enjoy Cape Cod. And there's a lot of perks to the job, but there's also a lot of trying times where you're on the road for a week or 10 days and you call home and you hear the babies crying in the background and you're about to sit down and eat a steak at a nice place and you're thinking, geez, Amy, sorry about that. Sorry you're dealing with that. Can I have that medium rare, please? So yeah, it's that kind of deal. But you have to have a great wife who's really understanding, and I do. I've got a wonderful wife who loves baseball, and she comes from an athletic family, and she was a really good track runner herself at Liberty, and so she gets it. And that's a big part of this job, is having a support system in place, like a wonderful wife who supports you in all you do, and kids that love what you do.
Jason, what have been some of the life lessons growing up, whether it's high school coaches, your college coaches, even your mom and dad, your brother's family? What have been some of the life lessons you've been able to take with you, every day, when you look back from where you were growing up to where you are now? What have been some things that's carried over for you?
I think a couple things, and I go back to Coach Evans about this. I remember when I was in California League and things were kind of going south for me a little bit. I was playing with the Dodgers system. I was in high A ball and I had broken my hand, and things were kind of going in a tough direction. I kind of saw myself dropping back behind a few players because I just couldn't stay healthy, and it was so frustrating for me because I felt like I had the ability to play in the big leagues, and but these injuries kept happening. But Coach Evans sent me a letter, and I'll always remember that letter because he was talking about how he always admired my ability to get the most out of myself and to rally through tough times, and he knew what I was going through, and he knew the words to say, and that's what we come from, Rock. We come from a community of
Yep.
where people really cared about us. And I'll always remember that. And I always think it's a good thing for kids to remember is that your encouragement, your words matter to them. When you can encourage somebody that's down, or when you're encouraging that kid that's not so popular at school, that's kind of sitting by themselves, that's the stuff that comes back in life. It's about people that are willing to say, hey, I don't have to be the coolest person in the room. I don't have to be the most popular person. What I need to be is I need to be a good person that cares about people. And I hope that I'm instilling that in my kids because I think I got that from a community of people in Rome that really seem to they want the best for you. And and Coach Evans led the way for me in my in my life. And Coach Abone was another one who just he said he would sit you down and say, Bake, you can do this. You've got the ability to do this. And that kind of encouragement always meant the world to me, and Rock, we get one opportunity at this life.
Hmm.
As you know, my brother Steve passed away with lung cancer
Hmm.
here about 6 months ago. And Steve was a really big name in Rome, and a lot of people remember him.
Yep.
And his life was taken way too early at 41. But I know that the Lord has a plan, and I know that we will all, if I can just say that one thing about this life is that it's passing and it's fleeting, and we all will come and be held to account for our lives at some point. And we know and we rejoice with Steve in the fact that he's not in pain anymore, but also that we know that he loved his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and he lived every day as if he wanted the world to know, I'm not just a good baseball player. I'm a person who loves the Lord and I want to serve him. And I think that's just the biggest and most important thing anyone in this world can do. And I just, I'd be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to talk about Steve. And I know a lot of people that listen to your program will remember him as a big high school player in Rome that got drafted out of high school and got drafted out of college and had a nice career and all those things. But at the end for Steve, when I was sitting with him at the end, and not to be morbid, but it was about not the things that he did with baseball, but what he did that meant the world to other people in the Lord, and in serving the Lord and living that life. And we all have to realize that we're here for a lot less time than we think. And boy, I'll tell you, if Steve was here today, he would tell you the things that matter are the opportunities we have to help other people and to serve others and to love the Lord and to live in a way that's pleasing to him.
Well, Jason, I can tell you that your brother. I used to talk to your brother probably twice a month, and it's been tough for all of us. It still hits me every day. But when he called me about 3 weeks before he passed away, and he told me, he said, "I'm proud of you, man." And I said, "Steve, I didn't do anything you've done in your life, man. I'm proud of you." But it was just that feeling you get, and that's how Rome was.
That's right.
That's how we all were. And I was going to ask you about how the family's doing and all that. I didn't know if you wanted to go that way, but I'm glad you did because he meant the world to me, and he meant the world to a lot of people.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Rock. And I know Steve loved Rome, boy. He loved. I mean, when that draft stuff happened, when he got drafted with the Expos there in 1998, I guess that was a huge deal. Upstate New York, you don't get drafted out of upstate New York. It's just
Mm-mm.
people don't go up. The scouts are. It's just far and few between that you go up to a place that has snow on the ground 5 months out of the year
Exactly.
to watch baseball. And Steve had the opportunity to get drafted, but you know, the thing that Steve talked about throughout his time and looking back at our careers and talking, he goes, that was the coolest moment because I just felt like everybody was really happy for me. Everybody was pumped, and that's Rome.
Yep.
That was
Yep.
Rome for us. It was a great opportunity for people to unite behind sports because we had as good a sports
Oh yeah.
as anybody in New York State, that's for sure. Constantly in the top in football and baseball and
Yep.
hockey. And we tried hard in basketball. We weren't always the best, but we tried hard. And Coach Evans made it a colorful program. And I mean, we just had stuff that a lot of kids don't have the opportunity to have now. And so I know that Steve really loved that, and that's something that was always impressed on him and on me and all of my brothers. You know, we have to count ourselves lucky for having that opportunity.
How's mom and dad and all the boys doing?
Yeah, they're doing great. Mom and dad are hanging in there. It's turning the page on Steve's passing, but I mean they're really good. I mean, again, there's comfort in knowing that we'll see him again in heaven because we know Christ is our Savior, and so we rest in that, and it makes it seem like life is more of a passage than it is anything else. We live here and we get a short time, and our lives are lived to be glorifying to God and to help others and to love people, and so that's really brought us together as a family in a way that we've never been brought together before when you go through losing someone that you're so close with. But you know, there's a lot of things to be excited about for our family coming, you know, in the next few months. With, you know, we have my brother Josh just got married,
Yep.
and we have new cousins coming into the fold, and nieces and nephews, and a new stage of Baker has arrived, and we're looking forward to showing the world all these great kids.
Well, listen, man, I appreciate you taking the time to come on, say hi to the family for me, and love you guys like brothers. I know we're not brothers, but you guys
Right.
always been good to me, man. So I appreciate it.
Well, thanks, you, Rock. And I got to tell you, know, Rock, I always remember you coming over and playing those football games with Steve and I over at 1504 Craig Street, and showing us what you could do over there, man. That was a good time, and you've turned out well. So we're proud of you.
I appreciate that, man. Have a good one. Keep in
All right.
touch.
Thank you. Thanks again.
All right, man. That was good, man. I've known the Baker guys since I was probably 7, 8 years old, maybe even younger than that. And I'm glad Jason brought up Steve. I didn't know if he wanted to go down that path, but I'm glad he did. He was great. He's had a great career. All the Baker boys have had great careers. And when I think of Rome, when I think of the brothers, I always think of the Baker boys. I think of the Ryan boys, who I'm going to have Kevin Ryan on the show here. I got to see if he's available next week or the week after. But it was so great to catch up with him. It's probably been, if I had to say, I think he's probably right, over 20 years. I didn't get a chance to see him when they were down here in Rome. I was out of town, so I didn't get a chance to see the family then. But just a great bunch of boys, and I know if everybody's listening tonight or they're watching on the replay, that everybody here is proud of all the Bakers. Just good people. So I'll post up the next show. I'm going to reach out and see if I can get Kevin Ryan on to talk about Rome, everything Rome. The Ryan boys are doing fantastic too out in Charlotte. Make sure to catch the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch is now on Sunday mornings from 9 to 11. I'll be posting the interviews from the radio show on the here. So make sure, give me a subscribe, give me a follow. And as I say on the Rock Pile every Wednesday night, the Rock Pile is where dreams become reality. Have a good evening, everybody.